What's up, hockey fans? Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Morning Cup of Hockey. Alongside Colby, Cohen, I'm Jonny, Lazarus, and we are presented by Betway. If you're going to place a bet, bet on Betway. Please play responsibly, and remember, you must be 19 years of age or older. The Boston Bruins come out in Game 1 against the Florida Panthers after everyone in the world is saying that the Panthers are going to steamroll them, kind of including us, right? I think we said yesterday that Boston could win, but the chances are they probably won't. And Jeremy Swayman does his thing. I said Swayman would start. Colby said Ullmark would start. I was right again. And the Bruins come out and take Game 1. Colby, what are your thoughts?
You better correct that before we get going. Go ahead, correct yourself.
I said Ullmark would start. Colby said Swayman would start. I could see his blood boiling right now. Can't take a joke early in the morning. But yeah, great performance by Boston. And listen, they're dangerous with Swayman and how well he's played.
You do not take the hottest player in the league out of his position for any circumstance unless they're dealing with a massive injury, or I guess unless they're Austin Matthews. But, you just let Swayman play until they lose a game or until he doesn't play well. There's been absolutely zero indications that this guy is dealing with any type of fatigue issues. And if anything, he looks like he's just continuing to get better and better in the playoffs. And we talked about this off the air before the show started. It's not a guarantee they win last night if Swayman isn't in the net. I mean, obviously Ullmark is a capable guy, but I had this conversation with Tyler Yaremchuk on DFO Live yesterday, and he felt like the difference between the two was so small. Therefore, why not give Ullmark the game and get him back into the playoffs?
Well, that's what I said too yesterday.
Some rest, but again, you've got a guy in the most important position in the sport of hockey playing at a level that maybe even he has never played at before. You just don't take him out of his rhythm. And look, Jonny, as wrong as you were, there were a lot of people who were agreeing with you. There was
I don't think I was that wrong.
Oh, you were that wrong. There was a whole community of people yesterday on Twitter calling for Ullmark to play. They got to give Swayman a rest, the rotation. Give me a break. This guy was the best player in the series against Toronto. He's been absolutely the puck right now is a beach ball to Jeremy Swayman. And last night, look, could the Bruins have still won? Sure. Did they completely outplay the Florida Panthers for 60 minutes? No, they did not. But Jeremy Swayman made the saves, the timely ones, and Bob did not. And that's the difference in the hockey game. I know they get it to 5-1. They get the empty netter. Brazeau scores the goal late to really stretch the game out. But let's not forget, there were 70% of that game was a very, very tight margin of 0-0, 1-1, and 2-1 hockey.
But let me say one thing too, because I think you did say this yesterday. I'm pretty sure you said start Swayman in Game 1. If he loses, then you go to Ullmark in Game 2. And I thought that was silly. Like, if you're going to give Ullmark one game, you let him start the series fresh at 0-0. That's why I thought you start Ullmark yesterday, and then you go back to Swayman. Like, it's clear that if Boston's going to win the Cup, Swayman's going to be the one to do it, right? Like, that's pretty clear. But after battling in a 7-game series where he only had one game that he didn't play in, and they're playing with 1 day in between of Game 7 and Game 1, it felt like a good opportunity to rest the guy. And that's why I thought you started.
You also got to think about the fact that, look, Toronto did not put that much offensive pressure on Swayman throughout that series. They really didn't. I mean, there weren't crazy barrages of him having to stand all over his head, and he wasn't facing 45 shots, 50 shots a night from Toronto. So, look, I did not think the Bruins had a real chance in this series. I really didn't. I think they got a better start last night, but then I think Florida kind of found their legs midway through the first period, maybe late in the first period. I think there were times in that game where Florida kind of took it to them a little bit, but give the Bruins credit. They answered back after Florida gets that first goal, a goal that I didn't love the Tkachuk.
I thought it was a good goal. I thought it was a good shot.
And then I saw the replay. He puts it right through Lindholm's leg, so it's through a good screen. But again,
that's that low blocker side. That's a tough save for goalie to make.
I wouldn't call it a soft goal, but I would say that's one you've generally seen Swayman make. But you give Tkachuk credit for finding the screen there. But look, the Bruins capitalized. They really did. They seem to make Florida pay on a few of their mistakes, other than maybe a couple of the pasta breakaways that were also mistakes. I mean, I thought Aaron Ekblad probably had his worst game in I don't know how long. I mean,
Just
he
looked a step behind.
did not play well last night. He was a
Uh,
turnover machine. He answered the Charlie McAvoy turnover on the first goal with his own turnover that leads to, was it Geeky's goal where he tucks that shot up under the bar?
oh no, that was well, yeah, the rebound.
Yeah, the rebound after
Yeah,
what was it? Zaka went hard to the net with it,
Yeah.
and Bob kind of makes contact with him. Here's a
Mhm.
look at it right there. There's the turnover by Ekblad, and I was like, are they going to try to call interference? But the goalie was out of his crease, and it looked like the goalie initiated the contact on top of the net. So I guess that's probably why they didn't challenge it. I know Ryan Callahan mentioned that on the broadcast, but
Mhm.
I think Florida probably is, there should not be any reason to panic in that locker room. I think they realize now that it's going to be difficult to score on Jeremy Swayman. They go from Vasilevsky to Swayman. They're not exactly drawing the best goaltending matchups here. And again, Bob was good last night, Johnny, but he wasn't bad, I should say, but he wasn't, the guy who stood on his head in round one. And that was the difference in the game, at least from my point of view. And then the one other comment that I want to make, because I was giving on Twitter, I was kind of harsh towards Monty before the game. And I said, look, how do you change a winning lineup that just won a game 7? Like, why are you making changes? They bring Brown onto the fourth line. They called him up from Providence and he played. They take Shattenkirk out and they put Forbert in, and I wasn't thrilled with that for obvious reasons. But, look, they won. It worked. And the other thing I will say is that game is 3-1 at one point. And Florida is pushing, big push. Okay. The shots are 11-4 on that stretch in the second period. Monty uses his timeout and completely changes the complexity of that period. He uses his timeout. Brad Marchand is pretty animated towards the end of the bench. Then that next shift, they go out. The Bruins have a ton of offensive pressure. And then not long from there, Brazeau scores and really makes the
beautiful
game,
goal too.
Puts the game out of reach. Was that in the third? It might have been the third, not the second.
Third.
So look, I was critical of Monty's decision to change the lineup before the game, but I will have to give him a ton of credit for that timeout. That was one of the best, most well-used timeouts I've seen a coach use in the playoffs. And people might be rolling their eyes at me and they're like, Colby, why are you talking about this? Well, because at 3-1, when Florida's got 11 shots to Boston's 4 in that stretch, and
they get one there,
they're coming with their big push. And we saw Florida come back against Tampa a couple of times when they were down by big margins and they didn't win, but they got close. You call that timeout and you completely grab the energy of your bench and you come out your next shift and you have your best shift of the period. If you're Boston, okay, that's what a coach can do. That is a coach making a mark on a game with a really, really small, subtle thing that, in my opinion, completely changes the outcome of that hockey game.
1000%. And Colby, great point, by the way. We have Frank Seravalli waiting, but I want to read one thing quickly about Jeremy Swayman before we move on from this. Arda O'Cal, good friend of ours, tweeted, Jeremy Swayman has now gone 7 consecutive games, allowing only 2 goals or less since the start of the playoffs. That's the 3rd best in NHL history. This guy is on fire, and that's from ESPN Stats and Info. So to your point before, it's going to be tough to take Swayman out of that net no matter what. Even if he loses a game at this point, they've made it clear that he's the guy. And I don't know if you even go to Ullmark, right?
No, you can't go to Ullmark now.
Well, I'm saying if he lost the game.
The only way you'll see Ullmark now in this series is if, let's say, the Florida Panthers get up 4-1 in a game and they want to just get Ullmark in just in case they need him. But it's Swayman's net. I think this whole thing is put to bed now. Unless they lose the next 2 in a row with Swayman or something like that, it's Swayman's net, plain and simple.
I agree.
All right, let's bring Frank in.
Yep. It's been a while since he's been on the show. He's been bouncing around in Vancouver and Utah, but it looks like you're back home. Welcome on, Frank. We've missed you over here.
Yeah, missed you guys home, but not for long. Heading back out to Vancouver today for Oilers Canucks, which should be awesome.
So can you tell us about the whole atmosphere environment of Vancouver? Because it's been, quite some time since they've had playoff games in that building. And, I don't know if we want to touch on it, but I saw some videos outside the arena of some little kids screaming F-bombs at some players and whatnot. But it feels like the Canucks crowd is very fired up to have them back in the playoffs in the second round.
Yeah, they are. First playoff home game in 9 years a couple weeks ago. They loved every second of it. It was great environment. And I think probably some nervous energy for game 5, see what would happen. And obviously they weren't able to pull out the victory, needed game 6 in Nashville, but I'd expect this all Canadian matchup, which honestly, it's kind of amazing that these teams have only met. This will now be the 3rd time in the playoffs ever. There's obviously a rivalry there, Western Canadian, same division, all that. But it'd be nice to see that ramp up a bit. And I think watching these two fan bases on social media so far has been pretty awesome.
Yeah. I actually, before you chime in, I have one question specifically about that series, because I think it's somewhat relevant. You talk about regular season matchups and stuff. Winnipeg sweeps Colorado in their regular season. Colorado wins that series. Boston won all 4 games against Florida in the regular season. Boston takes game 1. And I believe Vancouver won all the games against Edmonton this year in the regular season. So do you take that into account when thinking about a series prior, or is
some of those games totally really early in the year though, Frank, when they were on that awful 2-9?
I think the first
start?
2 was a back-to-back or a home and home.
The first 2, were in the first week of the season.
Yeah.
I don't put any stock at all in the season series between these two teams. I mean, just look at the way Colorado thrashed Winnipeg. I mean, the Jets crushed them in the regular season. They outscored them 17-4, and it meant absolutely nothing. Sometimes it means something, sometimes it means nothing. I think in this case, based on how different this Oiler team is, how different they defend, how much more efficient they are with the puck, how much better their penalty kill has been, I can't imagine this season series having any impact on the way this best of 7 series goes.
Agreed.
Frank, let me ask you a question, because I've played and been on teams that have gone through Canadian stops in the playoffs. That in the 2011 year, it was Montreal and it was Vancouver. And hockey playoffs in Canada are just, no matter how good we think they are here, it's just a whole nother level in Canada. It's like the NFL playoffs. So when you have 2 Canadian teams, is it just something that I can't even imagine, Frank? Because I never was a part of a Canadian franchise, so I've not witnessed it with my own eyes, but I would assume, is there an upped level of insanity around it because we've got 2 Canadian teams dueling it out here?
Yeah, I think there is for sure. The last one I covered was the Battle of Alberta in 2022. That's just a great, maybe the greatest rivalry in the league. And you take that and you make it a playoff series, and it just went to the next level. I think, unfortunately for everyone, except for the Oilers, it was such a short series, a 5-game series that no one saw coming. That series was ridiculous in the sense of not just the fan interaction and the intensity, but also the games themselves. They were absolutely bonkers. If you remember, some crazy high scoring games where so many different things were happening. In this case, I think maybe my favorite part about being in Canada for a playoff series is that the entire city, like if you don't go to the game, you're out at a bar watching it. You're somewhere doing something. And so there's this, you mentioned it's kind of like NFL playoffs, except it's better than that because it's every other day.
Yeah.
And you look at this schedule now, and there are no extra off days. It's every other day for the next 7 games, and starting on Wednesday. And there's this like collective, like inhale, exhale of an entire city. Everyone's out on a game day. And then the next day, when there is no game, everyone is at home hibernating. Like, how long until the next game?
I disagree. They're just talking about it and listening to every show talk.
Does anybody work?
Yeah.
But I'm saying at night.
Oh, at night. Yeah.
They don't leave. Like, they're like, hey, I'm not going out to dinner tonight. I'm not going to the bar. I'm not doing whatever. I am sitting at home on my couch and going to bed early because I know tomorrow night I'm getting less sleep and I'm going to be out spending money and I'm going to be probably hungover.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like wash, rinse, repeat every other night. So it's like, you're inhaling and then exhaling, and it's just this collective from the entire city, the entire market. It's an amazing sort of, I love going out to dinner the next night because no one's out.
Mm-hmm. What can you tell us, Frank, just staying with that series, about the goaltending situation for the Vancouver Canucks? Because it's been a little bit of a I guess, a roller coaster. They got through the first round, but if somebody would have told us before the playoffs started it would take them 3 goalies, we would have thought they were crazy, because they have one of the premier goaltenders in the NHL in Thatcher Demko, a Vezina finalist.
Yeah, it's kind of been wild. And if you would have said, hey, they needed 3 goalies, you're thinking, A, they probably would have lost the series, and B, if they were to win, that it would be a long series. It's kind of amazing the way that they got performances from Casey DeSmith, and then he goes down, and Artur Shilov's he's got a swagger to him, and he's played so well that not only is he going to be the game 1 starter, but I think the leash is actually probably going to be pretty long for him in this series before they would turn to DeSmith. Now,
is that confirmed that he's the game 1 starter?
Shilov's?
Yeah.
I mean, confirmed as much as anyone will confirm. I'm telling you, he's going to be the guy in net for game 1. They haven't said it. But when it comes to Thatcher Demko, my understanding is that he's at least out for the first chunk of the series, and then the later it goes, he has the possibility to come back. That's, obviously very fluid, and he's been skating a lot. He joined the team after practice yesterday again. I don't think he's yet dropping down, and certainly not taking shots, but the fact that he's on the ice and moving, probably a nice trend in the right direction for the Canucks.
Mm-hmm. So do you give the Canucks any shot at winning the series? Because to me, the Oilers, I don't know, they seem different. And, they took care of business in round 1. Their power play obviously is at, 45%. The PK's at a perfect 100%. I mean, special teams right now, they were the difference in round 1 for all 8 teams that won their first round series. So, I mean, how do you give the Canucks any shot with how well Edmonton not only is playing on their special teams, but with Stuart Skinner's performance in round 1 as well?
Yeah, and that's kind of the tough part, is the Canucks, their power play was not great in round 1. And they have some depth, but didn't get any depth scoring. Their Elias Pettersson didn't show up at all in round 1. And we've talked about it. They're on their 3rd goalie. Not that that's necessarily a huge drop off from Casey DeSmith. And in fact, some people in the Canucks organization think that Shilov's is slightly better than DeSmith, just on the whole.
Mm-hmm.
And it's really hard to squint and see a path that Vancouver can win the series. I'm not saying they can't. It's just they're going to need to do things a lot differently than they did in round 1, because I think on the whole, if you were to take all 6 games and say which team was the better team for the chunk of time, I'd probably say the Preds.
Yeah.
It's like Preds 58 or 60-40. So the Preds had a pretty sizable advantage, I think, in terms of how the series played itself out. The Canucks were able to win. They showed a ton of fight. They had the comebacks. Like, there were a lot of, I think, emotional components to like about the Canucks. They didn't show a lot of panic, and certainly some maturity for a team that doesn't have any playoff experience. But then you contrast that with the Oilers, which was a very workmanlike, business-like round 1. They thrashed the Kings in 2 of those games. I think it's going to be a step up. It's going to be harder against the Canucks. And one thing that most people didn't really appreciate about the Preds Canucks series was that the reason why it was such a grind, that was actually the way that the Canucks wanted to play, not the Preds. So they were able to gum it up, but you also just had an Oilers team play the Kings, who were tried to structurally at least slow things down. And that didn't work either. So I don't like if you're like, so you're going to need Elias Pettersson to beat Draisaitl. You're going to need Shelovs to outduel Stuart Skinner. You're going to need Quinn Hughes to dominate on the blue line. Like, you're going to need a bunch of things to happen all at the same time. And you're going to need the Oilers to shoot themselves in the foot because they have a penchant to do that. They just haven't shown that so far in this year's playoffs, which is a big reason why it's hard to kind of look past Edmonton here.
Frank, is the media pressure as high on Pettersson in Vancouver as Marner in Toronto?
No, but it's growing louder. And if he, doesn't come to play this series, then I think it's going to reach some serious decibels because you can't avoid it. Either something's wrong with him or something's wrong with his game in general, because he's not only is he not a force, it seems like at times he's barely involved in the play.
What did you make of?
He's just looked really, uninspiring, maybe would be the nice way for me to put it. I mean, just absolutely no pushback to the fact that playoff hockey is just harder. It's just a harder animal. Guys are fighting for space more. Refs are some nights letting more things go, some nights not. But it just doesn't look like when the knob is getting turned up on him, the fight is there. And when you make the kind of money that he makes, that comes with a lot of responsibility. And Mitch Marner's taking it on the chin right now, which is something I want to talk to Frank about. Johnny, I don't know if you got anything else to say about this series.
I was going to ask
uninspired is a great way to frame it.
But I would expect that, now that Toronto's out and, the media in Canada will converge on this Western Canadian series, it's time for Elias Pettersson to put up or shut up a little bit here and earn that big raise that you got.
Totally agree. There's really no excuse. If you don't produce goals or points, sometimes that happens. But when you're missing the fight, when you're sitting on the periphery and to the outside of the ice, like, everyone can see that from a million miles away. And that's the part that deserves criticism.
Yeah. So let's go east a little bit, Frank, because I know that's where Johnny wants to go next. And I think a lot of people are refreshing their Twitter timelines today, waiting for the news on Sheldon Keefe. I think it's become the worst kept secret in hockey. So I'm just wondering where we are with the Toronto situation, Frank, whether it's Keefe, whether is it going to be Craig Berube or who you're hearing potentially. Are they removing Brendan Shanahan from his role and they're just going to have GM and CEO? And then honestly, like I said on the show yesterday, and I said it on your show yesterday, obviously I filled in for you. I think the Mitch Marner situation is much more complicated than people make it out to be, because he's got all the leverage and he makes
that I have to stop you there. What leverage?
Okay, well, the leverage would be a no move clause and $11 million.
That means nothing
salary.
To me.
Okay,
it means nothing to me.
So
and I'll unpack it for you and tell you why.
Please do.
So put yourself in Mitch Marner's shoes, and the Toronto Maple Leafs come to you and say, "Hey, you're entering the final year of your deal. We're letting you know now that under zero circumstances are we re-signing you to an extension. Zero. So your choice is." You can either play out your all-important contract year on a team that does not want you here and a market that clearly does not want you here, or you can work with us and facilitate a trade, because whether it's last game in Boston, game 7, or whether it's game 82 or whenever we bow out of the playoffs next season, your time as a Toronto Maple Leaf is coming to an end.
Mm-hmm.
Boom, period, end of story. No movement clause becomes a non-factor.
But so let me ask you this then. Let me follow up with this. A guy who makes 10.9 AAV against the cap, okay? How many contenders are taking a player who disappears in the playoffs with an $11 million cap hit, which is there a huge market out there for him? Because if you're him, would you waive to get traded to a rebuild or a shitty situation that's where I think it becomes a little more complicated. And that's why I phrased it to you the way that I did.
Well, obviously he has some measure of control, but at some point you're going to have to become a believer in some other situations, because for better or for worse, the high water mark of the Mitch Marner, Austin Matthews era in Toronto is 5 wins out of 16 required. So how different is it than going to pick another team that's either a playoff team or nibbling around the edges of one? The real question that you're trying to get at it, is there a market for Mitch Marner? And the answer is yes.
And I think you tweeted that people are already looking into that market, correct?
Yeah, I didn't tweet it, but there's certainly plenty of teams that have said to me, hey, do you think what do you think the price is going to be? Is there any shot that we might be able to get some kind of bargain on this guy based on where Toronto is at least in terms of everyone knows that the contract needs to fit. What would the assets required be in order to make something like that happen? Now, because we're having this conversation doesn't necessarily 100% guarantee that the Toronto Maple Leafs are thinking that way or absolutely want to move him. I'm convinced that they know now that this isn't working, and that continuing to spend half of your cap on 4 players is not the way to build a team, let alone when you get to the postseason year in and year out, that Mitch Marner is the guy that continually disappoints. You can say whatever you want about the rest of the core. Austin Matthews, in the games that he played when he was healthy, he was their best player for the first part of the series. John Tavares, is he worth the $11 million that he makes right now? No, he's not.
No, but he's a good centerman in the NHL.
That contract, it's coming to an end.
Yeah.
So there's a finish line in sight. And you know what? He was still factoring into 2 game-winning goals in the series.
Yeah, John Tavares does more than just score points. I think people lose sight of that because of his cap number, and they want 150 points. But if you get him at the right cap number, I think Tavares is still a valuable player in this league, undoubtedly.
So then the next part of the equation is William Nylander, a guy who, to me, when you look at the playoffs, has always showed up.
Right.
He's the one guy I've never had any question about in terms of his compete, his heart, all those things. So you have still some foundational pieces. You've got to make changes, because you've got to make changes to your cap table. And you've also got to make changes because I think the easiest way to define this is when we get to when it matters most, are you helping us win? And for me, we have enough evidence now, 50 some games, to tell you that the answer for Mitch Marner is no. And I understand your point that, hey, why would there then be a market for him? But the answer to a lot of teams, I think, is what if we just get him out of the pressure and the bubble of Toronto? He's from there. This means so much to him. What if we put him in a situation where there just isn't as much pressure and we have some flexibility with our cap, and he's still a 95 to 100 point player?
He is that. He is that. We cannot take that away from him. He helps a team get to the playoffs. Absolutely.
Can I ask a question? And this might be a silly one, but just the way
so I wouldn't expect anything less.
But just the way my brain is working right now, thinking about this and just seeing all the scrutiny around the Maple Leafs, not only just this year, but the previous few years, is Toronto becoming an undesirable place for players to want to play hockey? Just seeing how, Mitch Marner says yesterday, we're treated like gods here. And I know that quote has been taken in different directions. Colby and I don't think he meant it in the way that it's coming across. He's saying, in my opinion, I'm not
you got to listen to the whole thing. All we did yesterday on social media was run 15 seconds of it, which, listen, it's the world we live in. He never should have even gone close to that statement, but he did. But if you listen to the length of it, it almost was, to me, him saying, like, it was almost like an arrogantly way to say you appreciate the market. Like, I just didn't think it was as bad as everybody else thought it was.
Like the Cowboys in Dallas, the Yankees in New York, the Lakers in LA, that's kind of what I think he was getting at. Right. But back to my question, when John Tavares went there, it seems like it was a situation that he felt was unique for him. He can go home and have the chance to win in Toronto with this younger group that has so much, I guess, potential to do it. Now that seems like it's failed. It's almost done with. What player would want to go there right now with how this team and how the players are treated?
They're treated like gods. It could be the best place in the world ever to play. Honestly, that people fall all over themselves for the Toronto Maple Leafs. They've got more resources available to them and creature comforts and every single thing that you could possibly imagine is taken care of for
free
you.
Free cars, free suits,
free everything.
Meals, free everything.
But you can find that in other places too.
No, you can't. Not on that level.
Not like they're treated there.
Maybe
no
Montreal,
one is treated like
Frank.
Yeah,
maybe Montreal. Maybe
not New York.
No,
maybe like the Rangers are the next closest team in the U.S.
But it's still New York. You still have way bigger things in New York. Toronto.
You get what I'm asking, though, right?
Yeah, but what I'm asking you is, if you think it's a tough place to play, you have an absolute loser's mentality, and you should never be anywhere within 200 miles of playing there.
So you think there are still players that want to take that challenge on?
No, let me. I've used this phrase a lot in the last 24 to 48 hours, and I want to tell you what I mean by that. I think it starts at the very top of this organization. I think there is this whole idea of, oh man, the pressure here, everyone's watching us, the eyeballs, every single thing that we do is monitored and measured. And, we have to tread carefully because we're the Toronto Maple Leafs and you don't want to upset the market. And this is how they think internally. That's actually what they believe, that there's this huge pressure cooker, this cauldron that they're playing in. I think it's an absolute crock of shit.
You think it's a myth?
I do.
Yeah.
Have you ever heard, Johnny, you live in New York. Have you ever heard the New York Yankees be like, oh man, I don't know if we can manage the pressure of the market in New York?
No, but the Yankees have also won a lot of championships. It's been 15 years, but they've won enough to, I think, have a little bit of a leeway with that. It's been how many years since Toronto's won a cup? Almost over 50?
1967.
I'm not a math guy, Frank. Come on.
The point is, the Lakers, they don't do that. What's the other team you mentioned?
They've won.
It doesn't matter. They don't go into every season thinking, "Oh my God, what's going to happen if we don't?" That's not how they operate. They're not like, "Hey, every single thing that we do in this market is monitored and measured and people are all over us." That's not how they operate. They're like, "We are the goddamn New York Yankees."
Yeah. And look, here's the other thing too, Johnny. I've had some close friends. James Van Riemsdyk played in Toronto and loved being a Toronto Maple Leaf. Mm-hmm. He absolutely loved it. There was pressure, but I think a lot of guys appreciate the pressure.
Mitch Marner loves being a Toronto Maple Leaf. He's a Toronto kid. That's his team. Doesn't mean because you love it that you can handle it. Because
that's a
you
good
get
point.
to the playoffs and his body language crumples.
Yeah, listen, it hasn't worked. And so, we're going to see what happens. I do not see any resolution with Mitch Marner anytime soon. I think this situation draws out a little bit, Frank.
Can I add one thing? I think it permeates through every level of what they do. Look at Sheldon Keefe.
Yeah.
He walks around like a ball of stress.
I know. Look at the difference from when he started that job to today. He's aged 70 years.
The picture, yeah.
Look, I can't comment on anyone and their aging.
Okay.
It goes through. If it starts at the top, then it goes to your head coach. Yeah. Then it goes to your players. There's nothing light about playing in that market, and it should be. Why are you guys in 2024 carrying around the demons since 1967? For what? It's not your fault that they didn't win 40 years ago.
Yeah,
in the
but
80s.
Frank, it is what it like. I agree with you that they shouldn't, but the reality is with social media and everybody's ability to have an opinion and have a platform, that's just it comes with the territory. It just does. It was the Cubs dealt with it. you know, with the curse, you know, the Red Sox dealt with it with their curse. They had extra. So it comes with the territory.
The Rangers are even doing it, and it's been 30 years.
In big markets. But I want to stay with Toronto, Frank, and I know we've only got a couple more minutes with you, but what is the latest about, you know, Sheldon Keefe was told he doesn't even have to be in the player meetings. Look, I think we can assume that news is coming. But the question I actually have for you, Frank, because it's, you know, they've been joking about it on TNT, and it seems like the whole world is saying Craig Berube is the front runner for that job. Do you have any idea of what's going on with the coaching front there?
Well, they obviously haven't made a decision yet to axe the current guy that they have. I think everyone kind of universally, probably even Sheldon Keefe, expects that that's coming. You have a lack of results, you're going to have something on the other end of that happens, a shoe that drops. I think without a doubt, Craig Berube would be on their list, but honestly, I'm not entirely sold that he's going to make it that far. I don't know that they haven't acted quickly enough yet. And I don't think he's going to sit around and wait to see, hey, what happens with the Toronto Maple Leafs before he potentially takes another job. I think he went deep in the Ottawa Senators job search.
Devils
I think he's right at the top of the New Jersey Devils list. And I actually wouldn't be surprised to see, you know, you don't think New Jersey's sitting there, you know, hearing and seeing all the same things? Do they step up and get something like that done sooner rather than later? I think that's the thought process, is that, you know, New Jersey's right there waiting, and it might even be a better fit for him.
And when you see, and maybe Frank, correct me if I'm wrong here, even though there's a number of jobs that are available, every time one job closes, the pressure turns up with these other jobs, right? Because a candidate goes off the board, whether we think it's a good candidate or not. But I would think even if you're Berube now, you're like, okay, that's one less job that I have a chance at. There's only 32 of these in the world. Right now, there's only a few of them open of the 32.
No, I don't know. I think for teams, there's pressure. I don't think for the individual candidate. In Craig Berube's case, he has next year left on his contract with the St. Louis Blues. So that takes the heat off immediately. And second, look at the situation right now. There are 7 openings. Keefe would make 8. Travis Green going to Ottawa would knock it back down to 7 whenever that's announced. That's almost a quarter of the league. Like, you're talking about some significant opportunity. So, and there's probably some, and I'm not speaking for Craig Berube, but I'm sure there's some situations that just aren't very attractive. Going to San Jose, Seattle, however you'd rank them in the pecking order, Seattle, you know, there's other jobs out there that just really aren't for everyone, that are like, hey, I think I'm a coach that, you know, could be with a contending team having won a Stanley Cup. Let me see if I can get a team back on track.
Frank, I just have one more for you, and I'll let Colby kind of wrap it up. But before I actually ask this question, happy birthday.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah, I just went on your Twitter page and all the balloons popped up. So
thank you.
Yeah, I hope you have a great day today.
Happy birthday, Frank. How about that?
But Colby, you don't want to talk about the draft lottery?
Oh, that's right. The draft lottery is tonight. And, you know, I know last year, Frank, you got to be in the room and you got to witness the whole thing, and then you wrote about it. And I think the NHL brings media in just so they can verify that it's not rigged like everybody thinks it is. Obviously, you're going to Vancouver today, so you're not doing it. But you want to...
Once is enough for me. Being sequestered and seeing the whole thing, the only thing that changes is the players available. And the teams that are in the mix. So I saw it for the first time with my own eyes last year. The ping pong balls, the whole pomp and circumstance, the guy walking in with the briefcase that's zip tied and snipping the zip tie and, you know, inspecting and loading the balls in, and being sequestered in a room with the commissioner and other people for a period of hours. It was fun to see. It was interesting to see. And it was funny because I wrote about it the next day, as did a couple other people that were in the room. And Connor Bedard goes to the Blackhawks, obviously. And people are like, this is rigged. Oh my God. Can you believe that they sent him to Chicago, big market team, trying to get that team back on track? And it's like, Okay, I write about it. I tell you all the details as to why it isn't rigged. And I'm a conspiracy theorist. I'm carrying water for people. Whatever the situation might be, I can assure you that I am carrying no one's water. And the entire process is monitored and vetted, and there's people from teams that get sent there just to oversee the process to ensure that it's all on the up and up. It's ridiculous to suggest anything otherwise.
If they were to win the lottery tonight, the meltdown around the NHL is going to be epic levels of melting down.
Could you imagine, though, if they were to be set up down the middle for the next 15 years with Bedard and Celebrini? And
Bedard,
by the way,
in the middle.
Perfect time to plug my pod that dropped yesterday. Frankly Speaking, with Jay Pandolfo, courtesy of Colby Cohen. He helped hook us up, and just a full pod on Macklin Celebrini and what he brings and what someone would be getting from his coach last season at Boston University.
The Crosby comparison.
Yeah, that was Colby said that to me before I did the interview. Like, I was like, all right, who does Celebrini? What's the comp? And he's like, I know this is going to sound weird, and he's not Crosby, but he's like, there are elements of Crosby's game that are in Celebrini's game.
Like, if you have to pick one of these like unbelievable one overalls, who does he play like? I said to Frank, I'm like, I do not like comparing anybody to Sidney Crosby because I just think that you don't do that. But if you're asking me who does he play like, I'm like, he kind of plays mostly like Crosby because of his effectiveness and his domination offensively and defensively. So Frank, we appreciate it. Go check out Frankly Speaking. I saw snippets from the show. We played a snippet yesterday on DFO Live. I'm glad that was able to work out. I think Jay Pandolfo, 900 plus games, played for Lou Lamoriello, won Stanley Cup. I mean, he was a letter wearer in the NHL. Like, he's a guy that when he talks, you want to hear what he has to say. Like, you trust him.
There's no hyperbole in what he says. Like, he's not out here, saying things for effect. So really enjoyed and appreciated our conversation. Not just 900 games in the NHL and being a head coach at the NCAA level, but you have to remember he also spent 5 years as an assistant coach in the NHL. And so when he says, hey, Macklin Celebrini could step in and play games tonight, he didn't mean in the regular season. He actually clarified and said you could drop him into the Stanley Cup playoffs tonight and he'd be a good player. I don't think anyone's necessarily shocked by that, but
and he's 17. He doesn't turn 18 for a couple months.
Yeah, he's actually not able to sign an NHL contract right now without a parent signing.
That's insane.
A chaperone. Yeah. All right, Frank, look, safe travels out to Vancouver.
Get some sushi for your birthday, right, Frank?
Go to Miku for dinner tonight. Enjoy that. And have a good day, all right?
Yeah, I'll talk to you guys next week. Thanks.
All right.
Thanks, Frank. Appreciate it. All right, Colby, let's get into our Parasso playoff preview. The most complete choice for shaving and beard care, made in Italy since 1948. Parasso has been a staple of Italian culture and barbershops globally for 4 generations. Get 15% off at parasso-usa.com with our promo code hockey15 in all caps, hockey15. I actually had a couple compliments in the chat when we signed on today about my playoff beard. It's coming in quite nice. I will say the oil, it helps with the itchiness because this is the longest my beard's ever been. And it's getting itchy. I'm plucking it. I'm playing with it. But the oil that Parasso has
when you
really
go into the Rangers locker room, are you like, yeah, solidarity, I'm growing a beard with you guys?
No, honestly, Arthur Staple, he's the best. He chirps me nonstop, and he was like, you one of the players? You're growing the beard? And I was like, we got sponsors.
Speaking of people in the chat, Chef Richard's asking how old Frank is. Frank would be, if I'm 35, Frank would be 37. So I think this would be Frank's 37th birthday. There was one other thing in the chat from earlier.
What forehead comment?
I think it was JC was talking about Vancouver and like how they rioted or whatever when they've lost Stanley Cups. So I just want to give a quick story and then we'll get into our playoff preview for our games tonight. When our team in 2011 won in Vancouver. We were supposed to spend the night in Vancouver that night and party, but because of the riots, they actually had to get us out of there like immediately from that game. There was no lingering around. There was no going to a party, no bars, no nothing. They had to basically police escort our families to the airport first because there were 2 planes, one for us, one for our families. And they had a police escort us all from the arena from, I think, Rogers. I don't remember what the name was called.
Rogers.
And they had a police escort us, like not just your normal police escort, like protective police escort out of the city to the airport, like almost right away. I mean, maybe we were there for that, still at the arena, drinking, partying, whatever, for like an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe. Again, this is a long time ago. It was a lot of shit happening. So maybe my details are off a little, but like we had to be whisked out of there because of the insanity happening in the city of Vancouver. So hopefully when they lose this round, they will handle it a little bit better.
People are chirping my forehead in the chat. I can't get past it.
Well, you do have a big forehead.
I got a big forehead. I got to start wearing hats again every day.
You do have a big forehead. You didn't know that?
No, I've never gotten that one.
Oh my God, Jesus. I would have figured kids in like middle school made fun of you for that.
Nah,
all right, let's
dude.
get into the games tonight because I know you got to get to Rangers morning skate.
Yeah, and my Marine said I have a 5 head. I gotta get to Rangers morning skate. Pierre Laviolette talks at 10:30. The Rangers again are being doubted. Home underdogs tonight in game 2. The power play looked unreal. Perfect 2 for 2 in game 1. Canes 0 for 5 on their power play. The Rangers look good at 5 on 5. I mean, when are people going to start respecting them, Colby? What do you think? What are your predictions for tonight in game 2? I think the Rangers have the edge again.
No, I think Carolina will answer the bell. I don't think Carolina's going to lose 2 in a row.
They're not good on the road in the playoffs, though.
I do think that, this series is going to be really good. I still think the Rangers are going to win the series.
You calling this a must-win for Carolina or no?
Definitely not calling any game 2 at any point of a playoff series a must-win. I don't do that type of thing.
Mm-hmm.
Like
I don't know who could.
You like that, the dramatic stuff for effect, and that's why nobody takes you seriously. But look, I think special teams will have a big part in the game. I trust that the Carolina Hurricanes will clean up their penalty kill. I think some of that has to do with that, and then some of that has to do with the fact that making good plays. I think we debated this with the game 7 Pasta goal. Sometimes a team just makes a good play. Yeah. I think the Rangers power play made some plays, but I expect the leaky areas for Carolina to be cleaned up. I think the big question might be, do you see Kochetkov in this game?
No,
I would think you go back to Anderson to start, but he did not play well. I mean, that soft goal against Panarin cost them at the end of the day. That's the game-winning goal. And we've talked over and over again how hard it is to overcome soft goals in the playoffs. So, and then one thing I just want to throw into the chat, Willis Credia said, can you speak to the parallels to extra players needing to be ready? Maybe if like Rempe were to get swapped out in New York or whatever. Look, every team has a group of extra players in the playoffs. There's no roster limit. Some are black aces, some are extras. Some guys practice with the teams. Then could be a group of players that don't practice with the team. But basically what they do is you skate like me. When I was in the 11, I would skate with the team. After practice, there would be 4 of us that weren't playing. We would get bag skated. After our bag skate, if it was a home game, if it was a road game, they would do we would have a workout. If it was a home game, we would get bag skated, we would go eat. And then when we came back before the game, we'd get to the game and then the guys would all be getting ready. So maybe you'd take warm-ups, but then you would get a bike workout and then a gym workout in after that. So they're constantly working you out, trying to keep you ready. They show you a lot of film when you're kind of an extra player, making sure you're dialed in with systems and what the other teams are trying to do. And look, I only went through this with Claude Julien's staff multiple times, so I haven't done this with 10 staff, so maybe everyone's different, but they do their best to really keep you engaged and really keep you ready if your number does get called for whatever position you may play. So it is important to have those guys and those depth type of players ready and in and around your room for the playoffs, and we've already seen it with teams needing guys, third goalies, fourth liners coming in and out, whatever. So I do think it'll be interesting to see if Rempe stays in tonight, because I think with Carolina's speed, I think he would be too. Yeah. But I think Brodzinski could add more right now. I really do. I think having him in the series would be helpful at some point. So
also, Colby, Blake Wheeler skated yesterday for the first time with the team since mid-February. So that's a good sign as well to have him.
And you've got Hedl, who's kind of in. So having depth, if you're going to win the Stanley Cup, most likely you will need that depth at some point. You just never know when you will need that depth. So. Yeah. You'll be at that game tonight, Johnny. You're going to pregame skate in a couple of minutes. We're going to wrap soon, but what are you thinking Colorado, Dallas? Where are you with this series? What are you expecting to see off the hop? Obviously, Colorado's had some time off. Dallas has had no time off. We saw how that maybe helped the Bruins get off to a little bit of a better start last night, where it took Florida a little bit more time to get into the game, although Florida does have a 1-0 lead at one point in that hockey game, but not sure the Panthers were quite as sharp as we've seen them, quite as efficient. I know on Carlo's goal, total duplication of coverage on the wall, and then Coyle peels up and Barkov, and I don't remember who the defenseman was with him, completely duplicate our puck watching. They overcover one guy, and then, Carlo gets lost on the far side. That's the difference really, in that game. So what do we think we'll see with Colorado Dallas tonight?
One thing I'm curious about with Colorado is if the physicality of Dallas will affect them. Dallas plays a very physical style. They block a lot of shots. They throw a ton of hits. And, I know Colorado has the speed edge in this series, but I'm wondering if they kind of shy away from it. I don't think they will, but that's just my concern about Colorado and Dallas. I think Dallas right now, they're feeling pretty hot after that Game 7 win. Game 1s, I feel like a team, like we said, Boston versus Florida after a Game 7, they seem to always take Game 1, especially with Dallas being on home ice. So I like Dallas tonight, but this one is, to me, this is a no-brainer going 7 games, right? Like, I know that was kind of what we said about Dallas and Vegas. Like, these are just two teams going at it. This could be or should be a Western Conference final, right? It's one of those series where these are two of the top, 5 teams in the NHL going at it. I'm really excited for this series. I think anyone who is a hockey fan should be excited for this series. It should be the most action-packed series, I'd say, in all 4. And it's tough for me to pick a winner, but I think I had Dallas in 7 in this one.
Yeah, well, and I think Colorado will. I mean, look,
I'm just going to keep betting against Colorado, the team that I was on all the regular season.
All year. The West runs through Colorado. You said that every week, the entire season.
Every week, and now I'm panicking.
Literally every week. But this will be a great series, just like the Vegas series was. I do think that, Georgiev answered questions in Series 1. But I'm not sure I trust him to do it again in Series 2. I hope he does, and he could prove me wrong. But I think obviously we give the edge to Ottinger, and we assume Ottinger.
But we did the same to Hellebuck.
Yeah, well,
I
think, but Ottinger also the second half of the series, Ottinger was really good. So,
but when I was talking about the goaltending, Colby, I was like, well, the Stars have Ottinger, so you got to give them the edge there. But we said the same thing last round. So it's
but listen, you can only do, Connor Hellebuck is going to win the Vezina. All right. So betting on Connor Hellebuck in a playoff series would be smart money. All right. It didn't necessarily work out, but it would be smart money. So, look, I just don't know. I look at Dallas's decor, and it's a good decor, but can it hang with the speed? I worry about the third pair of Ryan Suter and Nils Lundqvist. They got into some trouble in the Vegas series, especially in Game 7. I think Lindell's a good player, but does he have the foot speed for those top 2 lines of Colorado? I think, Rantanen didn't have the best series, but he made his mark late in the series. I think when they really needed him, he had some of his better games. You know what you're getting out of those star defensemen on Colorado. So I'd say that's an area where Colorado could potentially exploit. I mean, look, Heiskanen and Harley are a great pair. Tanev is more of that shutdown pair with Esa Lindell. Lindell's been around for a long time. He's got a lot of experience in the playoffs. So that's going to be a great series. They're a better team defensively, Dallas. They they just sort of, as a group, I think they protect the net better. They back pressure. They're just a little more structured, but don't sleep on Nate Dogg, man. In the playoffs, that guy, he's like a Ferrari. He gets going, he gets rumbling, and it's really difficult to stop him. And will Val Nichushkin continue at his pace? I mean, he was the best player in that series for Colorado. I really think he was. Yeah, he scores a ton of goals, but he scores big goals. He defends, he blocks shots. He does everything you'd want. So that'll be great. Be great. I'm going to save my bitching about the fact that on Saturday and Sunday, there's no day games. Like, I was looking ahead at the schedule. I'm going to save that rant for Thursday because I just don't understand why the NHL and the TV partners can't figure that out. Nobody needs to watch a 10 p.m. game on a Saturday or a Sunday when you've got the entire fucking day to do it. But again, I digress. Let's get into our Betway. Let's get into our Betway bet of the day before we let you go. Still offering this great promotion with Betway. They'll reimburse you up to $200 on your first bet. Take advantage of the opportunity. Create a new account using the QR code on your screen. That'll upload the code into the back. Make your bet. Hopefully you win your bet and you don't need the reimbursement. But if you don't win your bet, you will get reimbursed the $200. You can continue to play, bet on the different things happening, parlays, games, the NBA, whatever it is you like to get into. The offer is only available outside of Ontario. Please play responsibly. And where we're going tonight, and we went a little bit back and forth on this because the Rangers are plus money at home. And so you'd think, all right, plus 100 on home ice, but I just don't think Carolina is going to lose 2 straight in the playoffs. I think this series is going to go 7, ultimately favoring the New York Rangers. But I think Carolina, they win a game tonight. We're going to take them at minus 120. I know Jonny doesn't really agree with me. I think he believes the Rangers are going to get this game on home ice, which, listen, if they do, I don't think this is a slam dunk. I think this is a little bit of a toss-up. But again, when I look at Rod Brind'Amour and I look at the structure and I look at the discipline and I look at the big difference from game 1 being special teams, I think that's an area where I highly expect Carolina to clean up moving into game 2.
Well, I just respectfully disagree, but you can think what you want, and appreciate you kind of taking the show on your back here the last 2-3 minutes. I don't think I've said a word in 3 minutes, so kudos to you.
You can't talk about
Snaps to you. Snaps to you.
You're not allowed to talk when we do betting.
You're the GOAT, brother. You're the GOAT.
Not because I'm the GOAT, because you have contractual obligations.
You're the GOAT. You're a god.
Why
you're looked at as a god.
I want everyone to know Jonny does not take part in our betting segment because he has other contractual obligations. So he stays quiet during the betting segment. It has nothing to do with me being the GOAT. I am not even a huge gambler. Okay. So let's just qualify that statement.
Colby is looked at as a god in the betting community, but
yeah. Okay.
I've got to hop. I got to try to catch Peter Laviolette's press conference here. So great show today. Thank you to the chat. Thank you to Vic. Thank you to Frank Seravalli. And we will talk to you all tomorrow at 9 a.m. Have a great night, everybody, or a great day.
What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you need to be hitting the subscribe button right here at Daily Faceoff. Exclusive interviews and analysis from our hockey insider Frank Seravalli, fantasy updates from Brock Sagan, and a daily live show at noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. You don't want to miss any of the fantastic